Green is my favorite color. How did you guess? So yeah, now that you've seen the video about the interrogations, you could see how this is linked to the real world. This is really how they work. So focus on how Trent works on Jason. So guys, where we left off, page 127, and I'm going to read to the end, and this will finish up part 2. So I'll stop, I believe it's 142. So it's page 127 to 142. Let's go. I left off in the middle. But Trent cut him off. That ancient ploy, a question to divert the subject. Know what's interesting, Jason? He asked. What? The choice of weapon. You said a rock was used. That's what the police also think. A blunt object causing trauma. Those are the official words. It's interesting that you also said that a rock caused the trauma. Why did you say that, Jason? I don't know. There's lots of rocks there. Well, what do you think became of the rock? Jason shrugged, wriggled a bit in the chair, conscious again of the heat in the room. He was not really interested in all this stuff about the stone. What did all this have to do with him? He became aware of a headache starting, a small pulsing pain. I don't know what became of the rock. Maybe it got thrown away. He was getting tired of the questioning. Despite what Mr. Trent had said about helping out, he wanted really to get out of there, to go home. I think I'd like to go now, he said. I'd like to go home. Not quite yet, Jason. Why not? Hadn't he answered all the questions? Because, as I said, you are important. Not only were you close to Alicia, but you spent those last hours of her life with her. The killer did, not me, Jason said. Trent did not reply, merely looked at the boy. Then let's summarize, shall we? He said. Yes, Jason agreed. Summarize. The summary would prove that he was not the last one to see Alicia alive. You knew Alicia Bartlett. She was a little girl who seemed to like you. A smart little girl who often beat you at games. Made you feel inferior. Jason opened his mouth to speak. Somehow Mr. Trent had gotten it wrong, but the interrogator held up his hand like a traffic cop, and Jason sank back in his chair. You enjoy reading about violence, those books you read and movies you mentioned, Trent said, speaking a bit more rapidly, not wanting to give the boy a chance to interrupt. You said you're not sure sometimes about the difference between reality and fantasy. You daydream a lot, sometimes about violent things. But, again, the traffic stops motion. You're familiar with the woods where Alicia Bartlett was murdered. You said that a rock was used to kill her. The police had not divulged that information to the general public, and yet you said a rock was the murder weapon, right? Right, but opportunity and motive are the most important aspects of a case, Jason. And you had both. Motive? Alicia made fun of you, made you feel inferior. I liked Alicia. She never... There's a thin line between liking someone, even loving them, and then hating them. A spark can ignite very quickly. Let's face it, Jason. No one else had the opportunity. You were with her that afternoon, alone with her. I was alone with her, but... Look, it's understandable. You didn't want to hurt her, did you? No, Those things happen. You lose your temper, you get upset. Things happen fast. You didn't mean to do it, but things got out of hand. There was a rock nearby. It didn't happen like that, Jason said, voice rising in volume, seeming to bounce off the walls. How did it happen then? Triumph in Trent's voice. Jason recoiled, as if the questioner had slapped him in the face or struck him in the stomach, and his stomach suddenly felt hollow, his bowels loosening. He had a sudden urge to go to the bathroom. Trent saw the panic in the boy's eyes, the raw pain that distorted his features, the trembling of his lips, his hands raised in protest, his body suddenly shriveling as if he needed to make himself smaller, to squirm himself out of the trap he had walked into unaware. And in a blazing moment, Trent knew irrevocably that the boy was innocent, knew in the deepest part of his being, past all doubt and deception, that Jason Durant had not murdered Alicia Bartlett. Trent had witnessed Too many evasions and heard too many protestations in all his interrogations to have any doubt about it. Jason Durant was innocent. The accumulation of body movements and spontaneous responses, the lack of cunning in his voice and manner, all added up to the inescapable truth. Trent frowned in dismay and disappointment. He thought of Braxton and the senator waiting for the confession, the town outside gripped by fear and suspicion, waiting for him to deliver the goods, deliver the murder so that they could all sleep easy and not worry tonight if a door wasn't locked or if a son or daughter stayed out late. The senator's promise echoed in his mind. You can write your own ticket. He looked at the boy, so fragile in his innocence and naivety, so vulnerable, suggestible, unguarded, open to being shaped and molded, as others have been shaped and molded. The thought like a moving shadow across his mind. Well, maybe I'm wrong, he thought. Maybe for once my instincts aren't accurate. Maybe the boy is more clever than he seems. That momentary flash of deception earlier, was that a glimpse into the boy's real nature? Into his psyche, where guilt resided? Trent had dreaded the day he'd meet a subject who would be the epitome of deception, outwitting him in the game of questions and answers, thrust and parry, an idiot savant who would somehow outguess and outflank him. He remembered the classic description of a perfect crime, so perfect that it was never perceived as a crime. The perfect deceiver, then, would be someone so innocent-looking, so pure and upright in appearance, that any possibility of guilt would be instantly dismissed. This boy sitting before him, was he that perfect deceiver? Maybe. Or am I only deceiving myself? Trent knew that this was the moment of decision, to go on or stop. Simple, really. Dismiss the boy and send it back to his everyday, ordinary life, not knowing the fate he had just missed. Or should he dig deeper? Call upon all his own cunning and experience to find out if evil did lurk in the boy, if his appearance of innocence was just that, an appearance, facade, a mask. But you know it isn't, Trent dismissed the small voice inside him. Let's calm down, Trent heard himself saying in his most reasonable voice. Let's simply look at the facts, the case against you, and then find a way to mitigate it. The boy shook his head. Why do we have to do that? Why would the police think that He paused, obviously. Could not bring himself to say that fatal word. Did what they say I did. It's all those things we spoke about earlier, Jason. Motive and opportunity. The absence of other suspects. No one saw Alicia after you left her that day. By your own admission, you saw no one in town who was a stranger who acted suspiciously. Nobody else did. Alicia's parents, her brother, all can be accounted for. Trent purposely avoided using the word alibi. You can't account for your actions. Have no witnesses to what you were doing between 4 and 5 o'clock, which was the time of Alicia's death. You have a disposition toward violence. I what? Astounded at this suggestion. Everything that the questioner was saying was preposterous, but especially this disposition toward violent stuff. It's getting tricky. I'm only stating what the police believe. You attacked that boy last year in the cafeteria without provocation. I don't know about provocation. He was a bully, sneaky too. He did things to kids when he thought nobody was looking. He cornered Rebecca Talland and touched her. Did she report him? Jason shook his head, angry at himself for not doing a better job explaining what had happened. You see, no one saw him do those things. All they know is that one day, without any reason, you knocked him down in the cafeteria in front of your classmates. Everybody saw you do that. Nobody saw what you say he did. Jason was bothered again by Mr. Trent's choice of words, always leaving a doubt about Jason's behavior. Nobody saw what you say he did. Plus those horror stories you love to read and the violent movies you love to see. I don't love them. I mean, I like them, but I like other stuff too. Look, Jason, I'm only stating what they think. I'm trying to show you the seriousness of your situation. You are their prime suspect. They have evidence against you. No one else fits the profile. Silence fell, and Trent let it gather. Surreptitiously checked the recorder, saw the pulsing light that indicated the interrogation was being taped. All was going the way he assumed it would go. The boy had stepped almost willingly into the trap, and now the trap was closing around him. "I want to go home," Jason said. "Let me tell you something, Jason. You're safe here with me. Once you step out that door, there's nothing, nobody to protect you. Here we can devise a way to help you, to keep you safe." "How?" Eager with hope suddenly. "By devising a strategy." The boy frowned, obviously at a loss, at his most vulnerable now, floundering, helpless. Trent had to alter their relationship, must now become the boy's advocate. "This is the position you're in, Jason. You're the prime suspect." "Wait a minute," the boy said. "Yes, I came here because I was supposed to be helping you and the police. But that wasn't true, was it?" "Not entirely," Trent admitted. "It would have been wonderful to have had your assistance, or if you could have provided evidence that would point the finger of guilt elsewhere, that would have made us, or me, very happy. But that didn't happen, Jason. And we're left with the only evidence at hand, the evidence that points to you as the killer of Alicia Bartlett." Before the boy could answer, Trent went on. I know. You claim you're innocent, but you see it's only a claim, with nothing to support it. But let's leave it all aside for a moment and think of what you should do. What strategy should be employed? I'm trying to help you here, Jason." Liar, he's lying. "How can you help me?" Jason asked, bewildered, finding it hard to believe what he was asking. "First of all, we can't have any deception involved." Trent is saying, the most deceptive man ever, he's saying this. "We have to be straight and to the point. Keep it simple. Are you Catholic, Jason?" "Well, my mother and father and my sister, we go to church almost every Sunday." "Well, then you know about confession and absolution." "Yes, but I only went to confession once or twice. I haven't gone for a while." "So you know how it works. How first you confess and then are given absolution. You have to admit your sins before you can be forgiven." Jason nodded, wondering what being a Catholic and going to confession had to do with his situation here, his sudden predicament. "Well, there's something you have to do before we can take steps to protect you." A dim warning sounded somewhere in Jason's mind. His body, his spirit, he wasn't sure which or where, but was suddenly jolted thoroughly. Confession. A different word from confess. He suddenly saw where this man was going. He wanted Jason to confess to killing Alicia Bartlett. Jason almost giggled in his disbelief, a reaction that was as unpremeditated and unexpected as a belch. And a belch is a burp. No, it's water. "You want me to say I killed Alicia Bartlett?" Horror, disbelief in his voice. "If you leave this room right now, this minute, without any admission, there's no telling what's waiting for you outside. Angry people can turn very ugly. It doesn't take much to start a riot. Tell me what happens then if..." He could not bring himself to say the word. Would never say the word. Would never do what the word meant he would have to do. "I will have your voice on record," Trent said, indicating the recorder in the pulsing green light. "I'll go out and run interference for you. Tell the authorities out there the mitigating circumstances. How you're cooperating. Everything will be shown in the best possible light. The atmosphere will be friendly, not hostile. No one will be looking to shut you up in prison for the rest of your life. You'll receive consideration and understanding, helping hands. It's possible that you could go home today, be with your family. The charge can possibly be reduced. All kinds of good things can happen, in contrast to the worst scenario. Life in prison, away from your family, hated by people in town, your schoolmates. Once you make that admission, we can save you from all that." Yeah, so again, Trent, he's a bully and a liar. Like, I would like to meet Trent, put him in the corner, see how he, Yeah, I'll stop. But I can't do that. Let me emphasize the situation, Jason. Outside this door, there are officers waiting to charge you with the murder of Alicia Bartlett. Once you step outside, you will have no protection. Your age won't save you. There's a law now that allows a juvenile like yourself to be tried as an adult, which means life in prison without parole or worse. And you'll be looked upon as a murderer without any defenses. But there's a way to mitigate that outcome. What way? By showing that you are not a cold-blooded murderer, by showing that you did not mean to harm Alicia, that you are sorry that it happened. But I didn't kill her. I know. Denial is part of the defense mechanism. Because you didn't mean to do it translates in your mind to the belief that you didn't do it. It's entirely understandable, Jason. What you did in one blinding moment gets blotted out in your memory and you convince yourself that you didn't do it. But I didn't. You see, you're still in denial. And that's the worst thing that you can be at this moment. You must turn away from that denial, and then you'll have a better chance. What kind of better chance? A better chance to minimize the case against you. Once you make the admission, then your defense can begin to work. Your side of the case can be presented in the best possible light. People will see your side of the story. They'll see that you're a really good kid and deserve the best treatment. I can't reiterate enough how terrible it can be otherwise. The town outside, your friends and neighbors ready to rise against you, but if we show them your sorrow, your remorse, then you could change things around. Tears were tiny pools in the corners of the boy's eyes. Trent, for the first time, found it hard to look into the eyes of a subject. He turned his own eyes to the door, as if his glance could cause it to swing open and allow for the entrance of Braxton to announce that the killer had been found, detained and arrested, and that Jason Durant was free to go, which meant that Trent was also free to go. This responsibility lifted. More than that, this act of betrayal unnecessary. Betrayal. The act finally defined. Turning from the thought, Trent directed his eyes to the boy in his attitude of innocence. But that attitude would not show up on tape. Only his words. He also knew that he would never get this boy to sign a confession. That even his confession on tape would probably not hold up later. But he was not concerned with that now. He had been sent into this office to make this boy confess. Today. That was his mission. And what he intended to do. Make this boy utter the words that Trent must have on tape. Listen, he said to the boy. The boy inclined his head, his eyes beseeching Trent, as if Trent held all the answers and the solution as well as the answers. Hear the silence, Jason? Out there in the hallway? Yes, whispered his voice. It's a terrible kind of silence. It's people waiting with bated breath to see who leaves this room. A cold-blooded monster who killed a child, or a nice kid from a good family who's never been in trouble before. No police record, no human, makes mistakes like everyone else in the world. People will understand. They'll be rooting for you, but you must act first, Jason. It's all up to you. Trent could see the despair in the boy's eyes, his body drooping with weariness, the trembling of his chin, the tears staining his cheeks. He sensed the imminent moment of success, felt the sweet thrill of triumph. Everything else cast aside for the moment, all doubts gone. This was what he was hired to do, what he was born to do. You are what you do. Ah, Lottie. Ah, Sarah. 5 minutes later, the boy uttered the words Trent needed to hear. As the machine whirred, recording the bruised and broken voice. So he got his false confession. Listen to me. Trent may have got his confession, maybe he's winning now, but we were made for eternity. So eternally, Trent's going to be in really big trouble. He might be winning a little bit in this life, but guess what? This life is like a grain of sand on the monstrous beaches of the world. So he might gain a little grain of sand, but eternally, he's going to be drowning in the dark, evil ocean of nescience. Thanks for living, guys. Thanks for listening.